So for purposes of class today, we're going to really do three things. One, I want to talk about sort of the upcoming schedule for the next 4 weeks. Two, I want to talk about the requirements for your PowerPoint and your paper, the first of which is due on Monday. And then three, we're going to go through, today I'd like to go through Google and Microsoft, and basically the other classes, that's all we're going to have time to get through. And then Wednesday, Samsung and Facebook will be the plan. Okay? So with that in mind, I posted an assignment over the weekend, an announcement over the weekend. So if we go back to the announcements, the website is going to run slow when I want this. And under the announcements section, I have an announcement called Upcoming Timeline. And again, just want to talk about the remaining few weeks of class. So again, today and on Wednesday, we're going to talk about the last assignment, talking about the 4 tech companies. And then a week from today, on Monday, April 20th, because this is diverging a little bit from the syllabus based on the way that the semester's progressed, your group PowerPoint presentation is going to be due. Right? So your group project for the valuation is worth 30% of your grade, 30 points. And the PowerPoint that you're going to present next Monday is 7.5 points. Okay? And that's going to be a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation. Now, we're going to have to get through everybody next Monday, which means whoever we don't finish on Monday will then finish on Wednesday if there's spillover. But by Monday at 10 a.m., you have to submit your PowerPoint file. Now, in order to do the PowerPoint, you would have had to complete the valuation, but for Monday, I'm not going to ask you to turn in your Excel files. I'm really only going to ask you to present your PowerPoint file, which means you're going to have to take screenshots from Excel and put them into PowerPoint, right? And so you won't be able to jump from the PowerPoint to show me Excel, right? So your entire presentation has to be in the PowerPoint and is going to be graded based on what's in the PowerPoint. Now, the reason I'm doing that is out of fairness, because there's a disadvantage to going first. Because if you go after the first team and you realize that you forgot to put something in your presentation, then you could jump to a different file and show me what you forgot. So out of fairness, the only thing I'm going to grade is what's actually in the PowerPoint, and everybody has to turn in the PowerPoints before class starts at 10 a.m. So it's going to be a group submission, so make sure one of your group members submits the PowerPoint before the start of class. Otherwise, you're going to have a huge penalty, and you're not going to want to be that person. So don't forget to submit. Question?
So say if you were to critique our PowerPoint and then we realize that some numbers are wrong, can we then change our Excel?
That's the exact point. So what's going to happen is on Monday, hopefully we get done, and then I give you grades and feedback on the 20th, so that when you turn your paper in, you can take advantage of that. Right. So that's part of the idea. The PowerPoint is like a dry run to make sure that you don't miss anything, because the paper is due on the 27th, and the paper's worth 15 points. So the paper's worth a lot more than the first PowerPoint. And that paper, you have to turn in the Excel model, both Excels, the as-is and the final, and you have to write up the paper. Now, the way the paper is going to work is that each section, there's 4 sections, which we'll go over in detail in a minute, but there's the EIC section, which needs to be about 3 pages in length in the paper. It's a guideline, it's not a requirement. Bless you. The historical financial analysis is about 3 pages in length, the write-up. The multiples analysis is about 3 pages in length. And the valuation is about 3 pages in length. So total paper should be approximately 12 pages as a guideline, plus exhibits. So again, in this class, you have to show me the data behind your analysis. So Bloomberg screenshots are going to also be included. So the paper is probably going to be a lot longer than 12 pages when you throw the exhibits in. But regardless, you're going to have to put the exhibits into the paper plus those 2 Excel files. So that's the paper. The paper is going to be graded independently of the PowerPoint. Okay, so I'm not going to grade them as if you set it in one and you get credit in the other. So the paper is just going to be read and graded based on what's in the paper. The PowerPoint's going to be graded based on what you say in class next Monday. So they're independent. It's just same information, 2 different formats. Okay. Now, the next thing that's going to happen is the week of May 4th, and depending on the section, you will then make your presentation to a company representative. Okay. So those are going to vary by day of week. But when you do have your presentation, we will have to get through all teams in 90 minutes. So that class will probably run 90 minutes as opposed to 75 minutes. So we'll have to make some accommodations if anybody has any constraints, but we're going to have to get through everybody in that presentation. Now, to be clear, that's the final 7.5 points will be that second PowerPoint presentation. And you'll have whatever feedback you got from the written paper and whatever feedback you get from the first PowerPoint to then make it better so that when you show it to an external speaker, that it looks as good as possible. Right? Now, the second thing I got questions about earlier, so I'll just anticipate, is I said, what's the dress code? So for the internal PowerPoint next week, I'm not really going to ask for a dress code. But when we do the external presentation, that one will be business. Okay, so there will be a dress code for that day. And again, I'll clarify with all the sections what day that's going to be, but it'll either be on Monday the 4th or Wednesday the 6th will be the day for your external presentation. Right? Then the final point is both of these PowerPoint presentations are 10 minutes in length, but they're going to differ. The one you do next week, to me, is going to be more academically graded, which means you have to cover all of the data in 10 minutes. And that's the key. The one you do to the external speaker, it's similar, except it's more of an executive summary where you can focus a little bit more on a section if they're interested in that, because I'm also going to give them your PowerPoints in advance. So they might actually have some questions for you based on what they presented, and they might have some things that they're more interested in. So if you don't get to all the sections in the external presentation in 3 weeks, that's okay, right? Because it's more just about the key theme of the valuation. Where next week, you have to cover all 4 sections on a timer, and in 10 minutes, you got to cover it all. If you don't cover it, you will lose points. So difference in the nature of the presentations. Then what will happen is the week of May 11th is our final class. That day, your stock track write-ups are due. Okay. So again, what's going to be key there is that you'll turn in 1 to 2 sentences write-up for every trade that you made in a paper, plus print it out. Make sure your names are on it, and then you'll submit that. And then the final exam will be given out on Monday, May 11th. You'll have 7 days to complete the final exam. It'll be a take-home exam, right? So you'll take it, once you click on the exam through Canvas, you'll have a 4-hour window to take it. So it should take you approximately 2 hours to complete the final exam, but I'm going to give you a 4-hour timer to complete it over a 7-day period of time. Right? And you won't be able to start the exam without completing it. So don't just look at it and then decide I'm going to come back later, because the second you click on the link, the 4-hour clock will start. But you'll have a 4-hour timer to take a 2-hour exam, approximately 2 hours, you have up to 4 hours, over a 7-day period of time. So it'll be released on the 11th, needs to be completed by the 18th. And that's kind of how the next few weeks are going to flow. Questions about any of that? We rapidly close the end of the semester here. All right, so let's talk about your assignment. What needs to be in the paper? What needs to be in the PowerPoint presentation? Sorry, if I go to the announcements, that's the one that says Group Valuation Project Requirements. So again, 4 sections. Let's talk about next Monday, because that's the one that's most relevant to you right now. 10-minute presentation, 4 sections, that works out to 2.5 minutes per section. You have a lot to cover, right? I'm going to have a timer. When that timer hits 0, you're done. So if you only got through 3 sections and you run out of time, then you lose 25% of the grade for the PowerPoint. So you have to cover and manage your time accordingly. So what does that mean? That means, 1, I would practice with my group before I show up here. Right? Because if I haven't gotten my act together and I come up here for the first time, 10 minutes goes by really quick. And if I lose a whole section because I don't run out of time, I wouldn't be you when you go out into the hallway and your group is angry with you, because it's a group grade. So make sure that whoever's presenting, I would recommend also, it's perfectly okay to have note cards or other notes if you want to read from that. Like, again, for the technical presentation, make sure you cover all of the things that you need to cover. Don't forget something. So have it all scripted out is perfectly fine if you want. You don't have to script, but I'm just saying it's up to your group, but you got to cover the sections. So what do you have to cover? All right, so first section you got to cover is EIC, right? Economy, Industry, Company. 2.5 minutes. What do you have to say in the EIC? You got to talk about economic sensitivity. New slide. So originally I wanted to do a 5-year beta, But what I also want to do, and this is just one of the teams, it's working in the last section, but let's say I was doing Microsoft. In the RV section, one of the Bloomberg templates under markets is called beta. And there's actually a raw beta, an adjusted beta, let's give it an alpha, an R squared, and a standard deviation. But specifically, I don't just want you to talk about your company's beta, I want to talk about the industry beta. So is my company sensitive? Is my industry sensitive to changes in the economy? So ideally we want to use a 5-year beta. However, this is a 2-year beta, and since we're a week out and I want you to use this new screen, you're welcome to use the 2-year. If you wanted to go in and customize a 5-year beta as a custom field, you could do that. This is default to a 2-year, but this is really the screen that I want to see. All right, I want to see an industry beta over 5 years. So the idea is Microsoft's got a raw beta of 1.2. The industry that they're in, their peer group, is 1.21. So therefore, Microsoft is pretty much just as economically sensitive as their peers. And this industry, unlike McDonald's, is a lot more economically sensitive. 1.2 beta versus a 0.5 beta. Okay, so that's what you really need to say about the E. Second section is the I, the industry. As part of the industry, you're going to need the other RV screen. You'll need a screenshot. This is what I mean by exhibits. Screenshot of the operating ROIC against the weighted average cost of capital. So you need your industry spread. Okay, so there's the industry spread right there. You'll need that screenshot for the industry analysis. You'll also need your 5 forces table in your PowerPoint, okay, with the 1 to 5 scores, right? And then when you talk about the C, the competitive advantage, you'll also go back and refer to this RV screenshot, whether or not your company has competitive advantage or not, and what you think over time, right? Again, cadence, 2.5 minutes to do all of that. So very important, and I'll say this again, I am an informed grader. So you shouldn't waste time saying, I went to Bloomberg, I got the screenshot, I did this, and this is what beta means. That's just wasting your grade, right? I know that's what you did. You don't have to explain to me what you did as a process. Focus on the key elements. Microsoft's got a beta of 1.2 against an industry 1.21. Says they're very economic sensitive. Microsoft's about as sensitive as the industry because tech is sensitive to changes in the economy. Let's move on to the industry. This is a very attractive industry. Industry ROIC 70%, Microsoft 111%. All right, here's why. It's because buyers, particularly on the business side, don't have a lot of power. Microsoft is 90% share of the software market. You pretty much have to use their standards, particular corporate interoperability. Makes the substitute power low. This is why I scored it what I did. Makes the rivalry difficult because it's really hard to get into and out of this industry because you're an industry standard. I don't see a lot changing over the next 5 years. I think this is going to be a great, attractive industry. I think Microsoft will do well relative to their peers over the next 5 years because they are a standard, and that gives them competitive advantage. Move on to the next section. So that's what I'm saying. You're going to have to be quick, to the point, referencing data, because that's the other key. Don't just make assertions without referencing data. This is a finance class. But as I said, that's what you need to do. EIC. Yes, sir.
If we came with you with our company and our assumptions, would you tell us if we're right on the right track about it?
If you want to talk before the presentation, absolutely. And the TA, same thing. You're welcome to bounce this off the TAs because the TAs all had to do these presentations themselves. So they were in your shoes and could also give you some feedback. Okay? But during the presentation, no, obviously. All right, so second section, historical financial analysis. Again, let's say I go to, well, here's a student that was giving his presentation last semester, so let me get rid of this. Okay, file, open. Let's say I'm doing my Google. Sorry, there's like too many student stuff in here, so let me go back here. Homework 9. So here is my Google valuation solution, which I will post later. But in the second section, you want to do historical financial analysis. So you go to ROIC drivers. The first part of that is the ROIC tree. Okay, so you want to talk about the historical ROIC tree, the whole tree. Okay, both analysis. The first three drivers, the second three drivers. Right. So remember, you're probably going to want to split this over 2 PowerPoint slides because it might otherwise be hard to see. But that's the ROIC tree. The other historical analysis you're going to do for part 2 is the CFI, focusing on the 5 historical CFI years. So again, come to CFI, hide the future, got the totals. That's the 2 analysis for the historical that you got to do. That's section 2. Right? So again, make sure in your PowerPoint you include the tree, make sure you include the CFI data. Build it into the PowerPoint. Take screenshots. Right? Section 3, multiples. Specifically, you need to have in the RV section this multiple template that we had built earlier this semester. Same analysis that you did for the Procter & Gamble / Unilever, Nestle homework that we did. Right? So the idea is you got to have the 6 multiples, and then you got to talk about for the industry peers, Bloomberg, whole firm, you got to have at least 6. Right? Your company plus 5. So if you don't have 6 peers, find 6 peers to be on this list minimum. And you got to talk about, number 1, why your company is trading at a premium or discount. Right? So in this case, Microsoft, EV to sales, EV to EBITDA, EV to EBIT is trading at a discount. I got to explain why. Right? And why would be in the context of expected growth in ROIC. Okay? So again, why is my company trading at a premium or discount to the industry? Then I want you to talk about a couple of the other peers. So maybe I'll talk about Oracle, maybe I'll talk about Salesforce.com, and I'll talk about why they're trading at premium or discounts just to compare or contrast a couple of companies. Right? Finally, I want you to take at least 6 companies, yours plus 5 others. So think of the biggest 6, so I could rank them by market cap. And I want you to rank them, I want you to rank the ROICs from highest to lowest, expected ROICs, based on what you get out of the multiple analysis. So tell me who's going to perform best on expected ROIC to who's not going to perform best, based on what the multiples are telling you. That's section 3. Section 4, the valuation. Right? So everyone's doing an as-is valuation. You don't really need to tell me the process for doing the as-is valuation. What I really want to know are what were the key assumptions that you had to make to get the as-is, what was your target share price, right? And why did you change the assumptions to get to the target share price that got you the target share price? So what were the changes? What was your rationale? That's what's key to the valuation section. Again, you only have 2 minutes. And very clearly, the buy, sell, hold that accompanies that. Here's what's new that we haven't done yet that we'll spend a little bit more time on Wednesday. Right? There's going to be 2 sanity checks to your valuation. Right? Because you're going to give me the spreadsheet that says, here's my numbers. You know, here's my target price. Microsoft's at 40, whatever they were, 43, 42. And I think they're worth 52. So therefore, they're a buy because I believe that they're going to get better growth because I think they're going to grow at 4 to 5% versus to get the as-is, I needed to be at 2%. I think their margins are going to be at 40x% versus 30x%, whatever it turns out to be. So you're giving that, your rationale. And here's sanity test number 1. You're going to have a chart. Go back to the model. If you go to the EOY tab, row 15 is the expected historical and future ROIC that our model is generating. Okay? I want you to chart it. It's a line chart. So insert sheet, chart sheet. And I want to make this a line chart as opposed to a bar chart. This is Microsoft's historical and forecast ROIC. In fact, if you want to make it pretty, you can right-click on the chart. You can select the data, and the x-axis, you can actually make the years. This is what we'll do in class on Wednesday. So I have the historical and future ROIC, end of year ROIC, plotted out for Microsoft. This is what I mean by sanity check. This chart has to pass the smile test. So this is actually the as-is valuation for Microsoft at around 42, 43 a share. So what it says is Microsoft, which historically had an ROIC above 50%, is going to fall to 30%. And to justify their current stock price over the next 6 years, their ROIC is going to go back up to 50%. Well, that is hard to do. Right? Our bias, based on what you read in the book, should be that over time, ROICs regress towards the cost of capital. So your bias for the out years should be ROICs trending down, not trending up. This in finance is what's called a hockey stick. And hockey sticks are bad. What I mean by hockey stick is this is a perfect hockey stick. Basically, performance drops and then goes up into the future. That rarely happens. I'm not saying it can't happen, but this is what I mean by I have to have a rationale for why this is reasonable for Microsoft. So it's got to be a reasonableness test. So this is another way to just do a reasonableness test on our valuations. Does that make sense? Questions about this? So in your final valuation, after you do the valuation, you need to have a copy of this ROIC chart, and you got to tell me why this is reasonable. In fact, what people did last semester that I actually thought was pretty nice is they actually had the ROIC from the as-is chart and the ROIC from their target final valuation side by side. And they said, here's what we said the as-is, here's what we said in the final, here's why we thought our final one was more reasonable. Because without knowing anything, this is more likely to tell me that Microsoft might be a little bit overpriced, right? Because in order for them to do well, they have to do much better in the out years than they're doing currently. And for a mature company, that's really hard to do. If they were a growth company, it might be a different story. But for a mature company, where you tend to see in the out years, you tend to regress towards the cost of capital, not away from the cost of capital, they're going against the grain. So again, I'm not saying they can't do this, but I got to have a good rationale for why they would. So that's the first sanity test. Sanity test number 2, multiples. Okay? We've done, and you will have a screenshot for the multiples for Microsoft, right? And you have a range of multiples in the industry. So in your valuation, in your DCF valuation, we have an enterprise value. We have an EBITDA forecast for Microsoft in 2016 in our model, which means our model is creating essentially a forecasted multiple, EV to EBITDA, EV to EBIT. It's right here, right? Price to earnings ratio. There's the equity value divided by earnings. There's a PE ratio. So we're forecasting a multiple whether we realize it or not, right? So what I want to do is I want to take the multiples that come out of our model, right? And I want to compare them against the range of multiples that exist in the real world. And that's my second sanity check. So here's an example. Let's say that I come up with a sell multiple, and I'm just really, in my final valuation, I just don't like Microsoft. So I say Microsoft is going to trade at 5 times EBITDA. Well, if I look at the actual multiples, nobody in this industry is trading at 5 times EBITDA. So I really have to question why I would come up with that value and that price, because not just Microsoft, but the whole range of the industry, nobody's at 5 times EBITDA. Because remember, this screen that we're looking at right now is a representation of expected growth and return going forward, and I have the range of expected growth and returns. So if I come up with a final target price that has a multiple outside this expected growth and return range, then I just have to have a justification for it, because I'm seeing something different than what the entire industry is seeing. So I'm not saying you have to match the multiples, because then that's just an as-is valuation. But you just have to tell me that the multiple that you come up with based on your target share price is basically reasonable. So there's 2 multiples. There's a multiple section where you're looking at this actual data and explaining it. And then as part of your final valuation, you'll say my final stock price gives me this multiple, and against that range of multiples I did in the previous section, this also seems reasonable to have a trading multiple based on that final share price. So those are your 2 sanity checks. 1, that I have a reasonable expectation of ROIC going forward for the company, and number 2, that I have a reasonable multiple based on what I think the industry is trading at, and that's how we give some validation to our model that we create. Questions? Now, obviously, that took a lot more than 10 minutes. And as I said, next Monday, you only have 10 minutes to cover everything that I talked about. So you're going to have to be efficient, and your cadence is going to have to be on. So again, this is different than the corporate presentation you'll give in 3 weeks. That presentation doesn't have to cover every single item and every single piece of detail. And you don't have to speak like the FedEx man in the commercial, a mile a minute. All right, so here what you can do is you can, that one you can spread out. This one, though, you do have to cover the information. You got 10 minutes to be efficient. All 4 sections are equal weight, so don't spend all your time on one of the sections. Questions about any of that? Hopefully pretty straightforward. So again, EIC, historical financial analysis, multiple analysis, valuation. This was recorded and will be posted as a YouTube video for reference.